So we go now to another cliche. This one I like and don't plan on modifying. Don't even know who this guy is, but an adventure is an inconvenience rightly considered. I said, or if you look the other way, an inconvenience is an adventure wrongly considered. So depending on how you take the rest of this presentation, you can look at my life as a series of horrible inconveniences or a life full of adventure. So we start mine in the 1990s. I graduated here in 91. Let's get a little there. My first abortive attempt at entrepreneurship was a company called Maya Trading in 1992 while I was working as an engineer with a Chinese guy. And we decided we could do some trading with China. And this is when I met Boss Hogg. You're probably too young to know this. I think there's been an update on the Dukes of Hazzard since then. But we literally met a guy who drove a pink Cadillac with bull horns on the front, had 2 women in bikinis beside him at all times, and sold rawhide, which was the only person who would do business with us because we didn't know anything. And we had found a guy in China who didn't have a phone, who could dial out, who was a pretty big supplier of parts to a shoe factory for Nike. And since he didn't know the price and this guy didn't know any Chinese, we were able to get the 2 of them together. And the only problem was there was a banker in between the 2 of us. And naive as we were, it took him 20, 30 times before he finally got overt enough that we figured out they were asking for a bribe. Unfortunately, I had read the federal code on such things, and we didn't think that was the best idea. And so what ended up happening was our letter of credit was denied, the rawhide was seized in China, and we only lost $5,000 for that disaster. But so then I went back to my job, and I decided I was going to try to become an inventor. And so I worked many extra hours that thing looking for problems in my industry. At that time, I was working in the offshore oil business. And ultimately, this is a story of revenge, which we'll get to a little later. I had a supervisor. I remember the day he interviewed me. I've not had that many interviews for jobs, but he was reading it straight out of the book. And he would read all of them, what's your greatest strength? And, why do you want to work for this company? And what's your greatest weakness? And he was so serious. He was a guy from Turkey that I said, when he asked what my greatest weakness was, I told him kryptonite. He first asked me to spell it. And I was telling him K-R-Y. And then he stopped and he scribbled it out and he said, told bad joke, don't hire. So I'd finally come up with a big idea that was going to make my name in this company. And I was working on patenting it, and I showed it to my supervisor. And I worked over a holiday weekend. And during that holiday weekend, 4 days, he would come in the first day with his tennis outfit. He'd been playing tennis all day. And the next day, he came in with his beach outfit. Whoops, go back. He came in his beach outfit to see how I was doing. And the third day and fourth day, he kept coming in, and he'd obviously had a very good time that weekend. And on Monday morning, after I'd been awake for 4 days, I turned in everything to him to make the presentation, and he says, don't worry, I'll take care of it for you. And by that, he meant I'll white out your name and I'll file the patent myself. And thus inspired me to go out and do this for myself and not for anybody else. And so at that day, I set out I was going to become a patent lawyer and then start my own company in technology is what I thought. In the meantime, I quit the job shortly thereafter, and I traveled for 2 years. I lived in China, I lived in Africa, and I lived in Latin America for a little bit. I made another horrible attempt at trying to start a trading company, which was the final one. And on my trip to Africa, I met a man who owned this huge shop of curios and wood and stone goods, and we tried to start another little trading company. But unfortunately for me, there were 10,000 other people with the same idea, and this guy couldn't figure out time zones. He was already calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning every night, and couldn't seem to get it through his brain that if it was light over there, it wouldn't be light where I was. And so if he couldn't figure that out, he certainly couldn't figure out the international customs laws. So we had a little problem. So I went back to law school when I came back from my traveling, and I started with another person whose name shall not be mentioned. And this is my first lesson in how to pick business partners. In 1996, we started a website before there was even such a phrase as .coms. We had 100,000 lawyers using our legal research website because we were kind of idealists. We believed that the internet should be free, information should be free, and we were going to fight the system of Westlaw and Lexis charging $20 a search and $5 a page. And so we came up with a targeted search engine, and that was finding all of the free legal opinions out on the web. And we actually had the notable distinction, which sounds a lot better now than it maybe did then. We were in the top 100 by CERN, and given the top 1% by Internic, and even got a Kaplan Award. But at that time, there were only about 10,000 websites in the whole world, and ours was the first one to use moving graphics. But ultimately, we had a problem with my business partner was a son of a very wealthy person, owned Century 21, Texas or something. He lived in the penthouse overlooking the Capitol in Austin, Texas, and was always borrowing money from me. I lived on $600 a month, and so we were constantly fighting over money and who'd get what from different jobs we do. And then our dreams of internet fame and being billionaires ended finally when he kept hitting on my girlfriend. So pick your partners wisely. So in that one, we ended up in the difficult thing where I owned the domain name and he owned the server, and we were basically stuck. I think it's still out there.